In the 1950s, a black artist could write a song, record it first, and still lose it within weeks, because a white singer in another studio copied the sound note for note, and radio played that version instead. Here are 12 soul and R&B classics America barely got the chance to hear the way they were meant to be heard. Number 12, Two Hearts, Two Kisses by The Charms. Before Pat Boone became a household name, he needed a song, and Dot Records handed him one written by Otis Williams and Jesse Stone for a Cincinnati doo-wop group called The Charms. Their version was called Two Hearts, Two Kisses, cut in 1955, with the kind of loose, playful energy that filled up small clubs on the Chitlin circuit. It did well for what it was, a regional R&B hit that never had a real shot at national pop radio. Then Boone's version arrived, cleaned up, slowed down, and stripped of nearly everything that made the original interesting. Program directors at mainstream stations, who wouldn't touch a black vocal group's record, suddenly had no problem adding Boone's take into rotation. The Charms watched a song they built from nothing get repackaged and handed back to America with someone else's name on it.
You hear me?
Otis Williams kept writing, kept performing, kept working the R&B circuit. But the pop chart success that should have come from that song
Two hearts, two kisses make one love.
went to a 20-year-old college kid from Nashville who'd never set foot in a Chitlin circuit club.
Love should be made by two.
This is the pattern you're about to see over and over in this list. A black group builds a sound out of nothing. A white artist re-records it almost immediately. And radio, especially in the South and Midwest, treats the copy as the original. Two Hearts, Two Kisses is barely remembered today outside of serious doo-wop collectors, which is exactly the kind of erasure this list is trying to undo. What makes this case especially frustrating is how routine it all felt at the time. Nobody at Dot Records was hiding what they were doing. Randy Wood, the label's owner, openly built a business model around finding black R&B records with regional traction and rushing a white singer into the studio before the original had a real chance to spread past its own market. Two Hearts, Two Kisses wasn't an accident or a coincidence of timing. It was step one in a formula that would repeat itself, with barely any variation, for the next several years of Boone's early career.
Paradise, two hearts, two kisses.
Number 11, At My Front Door by the Dorados. The Dorados were a Chicago vocal group signed to VJ Records, and in 1955, they released a song called At My Front Door, built around a call and response hook that was catchy enough to climb into the top 20 on the national pop charts almost entirely on its own merit. A rare feat for a black vocal group at that time. It should have been the group's breakout moment. Instead, Pat Boone released a cover within weeks, and his version outsold theirs on white audience stations that had been reluctant to add the Dorados' original in the first place. The Dorados never had another pop crossover hit of that size again. Some music historians argue the covers actually helped by introducing white teenagers to the sound in the first place. And there's evidence that curiosity did lead some listeners back to original recordings once they became aware they existed. But that argument only goes so far when you look at who actually got the sales, the touring money, and the follow-up contracts. The Dorados got a modest hit and a footnote. Pat Boone got another notch in a catalogue that would eventually include over half a dozen covers of black R&B songs, nearly all of which outsold the originals they were built on. At My Front Door deserved to be the song people still hummed 70 years later. Instead, it's a trivia answer, filed under "also covered by Pat Boone," in liner notes, "nobody reads anymore," while the group who actually wrote and recorded it first gets a single line in the history books, if that. VJ Records, the label the Dorados recorded for, was itself a rare and important example of a black-owned record company competing in a marketplace stacked against it. The label would go on to sign major names throughout the late 50s and early 60s, but At My Front Door represents an early example of exactly the ceiling VJ kept running into. A genuinely great, genuinely popular record that still couldn't outmuscle a white cover on the stations that decided what counted as a national hit.
Here's something most people don't realize. Only about 10% of you watching will hit subscribe. The other 90% just watch and move on. You made it this far, so you're clearly not most people. Hit subscribe. Back to the countdown.
Number 10, I'll Be Home by the Flamingos. The Flamingos were a Chicago doo-wop group known for lush, aching harmonies. And in 1956 they recorded I'll Be Home, a slow, heartfelt ballad about a soldier writing to the woman he loves. It's the kind of song that should have carried a whole career on its own. On the Black audience charts it did exactly that, becoming a real hit and a staple of the Flamingos' live sets for years afterward. But almost as soon as it started climbing, Pat Boone released his own version, and his take is the one that ended up dominating national pop radio that year. Boone's version was slower still, smoothed over until almost nothing of the original's ache survived. But it didn't matter, because the stations that mattered for national chart position were playing him, not them. The Flamingos would go on to have other hits later in their career, most famously a version of I Only Have Eyes for You a few years later, so this wasn't a group that vanished. But I'll Be Home represents something specific, a song written and performed with genuine emotional weight, handed over to an audience that would only accept that emotion once it came from a white face and a cleaner arrangement. Reportedly, some radio program directors at the time openly admitted they wouldn't add a black vocal group's ballad into rotation, regardless of quality. Which tells you the barrier here wasn't really about the song at all. Decades later, music historians revisiting the doo-wop era have largely reversed the verdict, treating the Flamingos' version of I'll Be Home as the definitive recording, and Boone's as a historical footnote worth mentioning mostly to explain how the charts worked back then. That reversal is a small kind of justice, but it arrived roughly 70 years too late to change what actually happened to the group's career and finances in 1956, when the version that paid was the one that wasn't theirs. Number 9, I Hear You Knockin' by Smiley Lewis. Smiley Lewis was a New Orleans R&B singer with a booming, gravel-edged voice. And in 1955, he recorded I Hear You Knockin', a song built on a rolling piano line and a lyric about an ex-lover showing up uninvited. It became a solid regional hit out of New Orleans, the kind of record that filled dance floors across the South. Then Dot Records put Gail Storm, a television actress with almost no R&B background, into a studio to record her own version.
And don't be afraid to join in.
And her cleaned-up take became a massive national pop hit, reportedly outselling Lewis's original by a wide margin. Smiley Lewis kept recording strong material throughout the decade, including songs later covered by Fats Domino and other major names. But he never had the crossover moment his talent seemed to demand. Some historians point out that Storm's version, whatever its shortcomings, did put New Orleans R&B in front of an audience that otherwise wouldn't have heard it at all. And there's truth to that. But it's hard to call that a fair trade when the artist who actually built the song from nothing got a regional hit. And a health that failed him within a couple of decades, dying in relative obscurity in the 1960s. I Hear You Knockin' is now more associated with Dave Edmunds' 1970s rock cover than with either Lewis or Storm, which is its own kind of quiet erasure, burying the originator 2 layers deep instead of 1. Lewis wrote or co-wrote several other songs that became hits for other, bigger names over the course of his career. A pattern that repeats his story in miniature, even outside the world of direct cover versions. He was, by most accounts, a generous and easygoing man about it, more focused on getting paid fairly for his writing than on chasing credit or fame. Whether that generosity was a genuine personal trait or simply the only realistic posture available to a black songwriter working within a system stacked this heavily against him, is something history hasn't fully settled. Number 8. Good Night, Sweetheart. Good Night by the Spaniels. The Spaniels were a doo-wop group out of Gary, Indiana.
Stay in my house at 12 o'clock, so I had to...
And their 1954 recording of Good Night, Sweetheart, Good Night is one of the most quietly beautiful vocal group records of the era. A slow, sighing farewell song built around a simple bass vocal hook. It did well enough on R&B charts to be considered a genuine hit within that market.
Let me tell you something, son. She said, now your mama might not mind.
Then the Maguire sisters, a polished white vocal trio built for television variety shows, recorded a version so sweetened and simplified
Good night, sweetheart.
It barely resembled the original's mood, and their take became the far bigger national pop hit. The Spaniels never fully recovered the commercial momentum that record should have given them,
And you staying at after 12 o'clock. But she ain't mean for you.
cycling through lineup changes for the rest of the decade while chasing a follow-up hit that never quite arrived.
This when I was...
What makes this case sting in a particular way is how directly traceable the melody and arrangement are between the two versions. Note for note in places, structure for structure.
Good night.
With the Maguire sisters version essentially functioning as a track-by-track translation into a more palatable register for white radio audiences. The original didn't need translating. It needed airplay. Today, Good Night, Sweetheart, Good Night survives mostly through samples and homages in later decades, including its use as a closing theme on American Graffiti, a film that, notably, credits the song's era more than the group that actually made it what it was. The Spaniels themselves never fully broke through nationally the way their talent suggested they should have, cycling through VJ Records for the rest of the decade and picking up steady but modest R&B chart placements without another crossover moment of this size. It's worth sitting with the fact that this happened to a genuinely gifted group, not once, but as a pattern across their whole career, which suggests the ceiling they hit wasn't about one unlucky song. It was built into the structure of the industry they were working inside of. Number 7. I'm Walkin' by Fats Domino. By the mid-1950s, Fats Domino was already one of the biggest names in R&B. But even he wasn't immune to the pattern. His 1957 recording, I'm Walkin', was an upbeat, piano-driven strut of a song, distinctly his sound, distinctly New Orleans. Ricky Nelson, a teenage television star from the sitcom Ozzie and Harriet, recorded his own version almost immediately, using his built-in TV audience to push it up the pop charts fast enough that some record buyers assumed it was his song originally. Domino's version still charted respectably on its own, since by this point he had enough of a name that total erasure wasn't really possible anymore. But the difference in reach was real, and it illustrates something important about how this whole system worked. It wasn't only about unknown artists getting buried by unknown white singers. Even an established R&B star with real crossover appeal could watch a teenager with a television show absorb a meaningful share of the song's commercial life just by being white, and already inside America's living rooms every week. Domino, by most accounts, took a fairly practical view of these covers over the years, more frustrated by the lack of a release date buffer than by the covers existing at all. Having said publicly that labels should wait at least a month before releasing a competing version. That request was consistently ignored, and I'm Walkin' remains one of the clearer examples of how even an artist with genuine star power still had to compete with a system built to favor whoever the television cameras happened to already be pointed at. Nelson, to be fair, wasn't simply a passive beneficiary here. He genuinely loved rock and roll and rhythm and blues, and he'd go on to build a legitimate career as a performer in his own right, rather than fading out as a one-hit novelty act. But that's exactly what makes this case worth including. Even a white artist who wasn't cynically hunting for black material to strip mine still absorbed a disproportionate share of the commercial rewards from a song that wasn't originally his, purely as a byproduct of which audience America's media infrastructure was already built to serve first. Number 6. I Almost Lost My Mind, by Ivory Joe Hunter. Ivory Joe Hunter was a Texas-born singer and pianist with a smooth, aching vocal style, and his 1950 song, I Almost Lost My Mind, about heartbreak so severe it borders on unraveling, became a #1 hit on the R&B charts. It's considered one of his finest recordings. Nat King Cole, already a major crossover star in his own right, recorded a version that did reasonably well, but it was Pat Boone's 1956 version, 6 years after Hunter's original, that became the massive #1 pop hit, dominating the charts for weeks in a way neither Hunter's nor Cole's version ever did. Think about the gap there. 6 years passed between the original hit and the cover that actually made money at the scale that mattered, which tells you the song itself was never the obstacle. Hunter kept writing and recording for decades afterward, eventually becoming known as one of the more successful black songwriters of his generation. In terms of composing credits, but the specific commercial peak of I Almost Lost My Mind, the version that got the biggest push, the most airplay, and the most cultural memory attached to it, belonged to a white singer from Nashville who recorded it more than half a decade after Hunter poured his own heartbreak into the original take. 6 years is long enough that most listeners buying Boone's version in 1956 likely had no idea an original even existed, which may be the quietest, most complete form of erasure on this entire list. Hunter's broader career actually offers a small counterweight to this story. As a songwriter, he wrote or co-wrote material that other major artists recorded and profited from over the following decades. And industry insiders came to respect him deeply as a craftsman, even when the general public didn't know his name. That respect is real. But it's also a familiar consolation prize. The kind black innovators of this era were routinely handed in place of the direct commercial recognition and financial reward a white artist would have received for the exact same body of work. Number 5. Shake, Rattle and Roll by Big Joe Turner. Big Joe Turner was a blues shouter with a voice built to fill a room without a microphone. And his 1954 recording of Shake, Rattle and Roll is one of the foundational records of what would become rock and roll, raw, sly, and packed with lyrics considerably more suggestive than what would follow. It topped the R&B charts. Bill Haley and the Comets recorded a version within months, stripping out or softening several lyrics along the way, and their cleaned-up cover became a much bigger national pop hit.
Hey, Big Joe Turner!
One now widely credited in popular music history as an early rock and roll landmark in its own right. Turner's original is rarely the version taught in general music history classes. Even though it came first, hit first, and arguably swings harder than Haley's take ever did.
Come on in!
Some historians frame Haley's version as a bridge that helped introduce a wary white audience to a rhythm and blues sound they wouldn't otherwise have accepted. And there's some evidence for that framing, but bridges are supposed to lead somewhere. And in this case, they mostly led back to more white artists making more careers off black originals, while Turner kept performing to devoted blues audiences, without ever reaching the mainstream scale. His voice and this specific recording clearly earned. Listen to both versions back to back today, and the difference in grit is impossible to miss. Yet it's Haley's cleaned-up cover that ended up canonized in nearly every mainstream telling of how rock and roll began. Turner did eventually receive broader recognition later in life, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in its very first class in 1986, a full 3 decades after Shake, Rattle and Roll first hit. That induction matters, and it's a genuine correction of the historical record at the institutional level. But it also arrived only after Turner had spent those 3 decades performing largely outside the commercial spotlight that his own recording, by rights, should have opened up for him back in 1954. Number 4. Sh Boom by the Chords. The Chords were a doo-wop group from the Bronx, and their 1954 recording of Sh-Boom is now considered one of the first R&B records to genuinely break into the national pop top 10 on its own, reaching as high as number 5 that summer, a real crossover milestone worth celebrating on its own terms. But within weeks, the Crew Cuts, a white Canadian vocal group, released their own version, and it became the number 1 song in the entire country for over 2 months. The Crew Cuts didn't stop there. They went on to cover multiple other R&B hits in the years that followed, systematically working through the same catalog of black vocal group records that had built momentum on their own merit, converting each into a bigger, whiter hit. Sh-Boom is genuinely a turning point in music history, credited by many historians as one of the records that first cracked open the wall
Life could be a dream, sweetheart.
between R&B radio and mainstream pop radio. But the way it's remembered by casual audiences today skews heavily toward the crew cuts version.
Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again.
The one that hit #1, rather than the Chords' original, the one that actually did the harder work of proving a black vocal group's record could compete on pop radio in the first place. The Chords opened the door. Someone else walked through it, got paid for the walk, and left them standing on the other side of it. The insult didn't stop at the charts. Not long after the song took off, the Chords learned another, more obscure group already held the rights to their own name, and they were legally forced to rebrand themselves the Chord Cats just to keep performing. Then later, the She-Booms, in one last attempt to salvage a career built on the one hit that should have set them up for life. An Atlantic Records executive would later describe the group's story to a reporter almost as a shrug, noting simply how quickly artists like this could fade from the business entirely once the moment passed them by. Number 3. Tweedly Dee by LaVern Baker. LaVern Baker recorded Tweedly Dee in 1954. A bouncy, playful R&B tune that became a genuine hit and helped establish her as one of the more prominent black female vocalists of the era. Georgia Gibbs recorded a nearly identical version soon after, arrangement and phrasing included, and her take became the far bigger national pop hit. Baker was reportedly furious enough about it that she pursued having Gibbs's flight insured against her own death, on the theory that if something happened to Baker, audiences would realize how much of Gibbs's success depended on copying her specific vocal choices rather than any Gibbs original innovation. Baker also became one of the more outspoken advocates for songwriter and performer protections in the years that followed, pushing for legal reforms that would make note-for-note arrangement copying harder to do without consequence, reforms that mostly arrived too late to help her own generation of artists. Tweedly Dee's melody and structure are close enough between the two versions that side-by-side listening makes the copying obvious, even to casual listeners today. Baker went on to have a long, respected career and was eventually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So this isn't a story about an artist erased entirely. It's a story about a specific song, a specific moment, and a specific act of copying that Baker never stopped being angry about publicly. She didn't stop at the insurance stunt either. Baker took her case directly to Michigan Congressman Charles Diggs Jr., asking Congress to consider legislation that would make copying another artist's arrangement note for note just as illegal as stealing the composition itself. Congress ultimately decided the issue fell outside its purview and declined to act, so the bill went nowhere. But Baker had put the practice on the public record in a way that made it a little harder for the industry to pretend it wasn't happening. Number 2. The Wallflower by Etta James. Etta James was still a teenager in 1955 when she recorded The Wallflower, sometimes known by its opening line, "Roll With Me, Henry," a raw, playful answer record built around innuendo that Georgia Gibbs's label wanted softened for white audiences. Gibbs' version, retitled "Dance With Me, Henry," became a massive #1 pop hit, while James's original stayed largely confined to R&B stations, despite topping that chart in its own right. Pat Boone himself later said in interviews that he'd been asked to record his own cover of James's song and turned it down.
At last.
saying he simply couldn't find a way to make the lyrics work for his image, which is its own quiet admission of how sexually charged and specifically black the original really was, before Gibbs's version sanded it down into something safer. James was 17 when this happened.
And you smile.
Watching a song she'd made her name on get renamed, resung and resold by a much older, much more established white singer, with essentially none of the profit or recognition flowing back her way. James would go on to have an extraordinary career across decades, eventually recording, at last, one of the most enduring vocal performances in American music.
A thrill that
But The Wallflower remains a specific, well-documented instance of a teenager's breakout record being taken, retitled,
I found a dream.
and handed to someone else before she'd even had the chance to build on it herself. Gibbs, notably, went on to record at least one more note-for-note cover after this, lifting another Baker song soon afterward, before largely stepping away from the practice as public embarrassment around it grew through the mid-1950s. That shift didn't happen out of nowhere. It came from the cumulative pressure of artists like James and Baker refusing to stay quiet about what was being taken from them, even when the industry itself showed little interest in stopping it on its own. Number 1. Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. Little Richard recorded Tutti Frutti in 1955, and it is, by nearly universal critical agreement now, one of the most electrifying vocal performances in the history of recorded music. Wild, unfiltered, and utterly unlike anything mainstream pop radio had ever allowed onto the air. Pat Boone's cover, recorded almost immediately after, reached number 12 on the pop charts, while Little Richard's original stalled lower, kept off many mainstream playlists, specifically because program directors considered the original too raw, too suggestive, and too explicitly tied to a sound coded as black for white teenage audiences. Little Richard later said, with the kind of dry bitterness only he could deliver, that white kids might have kept Boone's version on top of their dresser where their parents could see it, but they kept his version hidden in the drawer underneath, because that was the version they actually wanted to hear. When the same dynamic repeated itself with Long Tall Sally the following year, Little Richard reportedly wrote it deliberately packed with rapid-fire wordplay. He suspected Boone wouldn't be able to replicate convincingly, and this time, the original won, climbing to number 6, while Boone's version stalled at 23. That single victory doesn't undo everything that came before it on this list. It proves the barrier was never about talent or quality. It was about who radio was willing to let America hear first. History has, at least, been kinder to the record than radio programmers were in 1956. Rolling Stone and virtually every serious critical retrospective since have named Tutti Frutti among the handful of recordings that essentially invented rock and roll as a genre, while Boone's version is remembered today mostly as a historical curiosity, a footnote explaining what white America was willing to accept before it was ready for the real thing. That's a form of justice, but it's the slow kind, the kind that arrives generations after the artist who earned it could actually benefit from it.